Commander Vestal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth spin slowly on the main view screen. The blue and green planet looked peaceful, almost primitive. His sensory officers had spent 3 months studying the humans, and the reports were all the same. The species was divided into hundreds of competing nations. Their weapons were crude. Their ships barely reached their own moon with any reliability. Perfect prey. The Zektar Dominion had conquered 17 star systems using the same approach. Arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and crush any resistance. It worked every time. The Zektar were taller, stronger, and more advanced than every species they had encountered. Their plasma weapons could turn mountains into glass. Their shields could withstand nuclear strikes without even flickering. Vextul's fleet consisted of 40 warships, each one capable of destroying a human city from orbit. He had brought more than enough force to subdue this world. The humans had maybe 200 small combat vessels scattered across their solar system. Toys compared to Zektar dreadnoughts. Send the standard ultimatum. Vextul ordered his communications officer. Give them the usual terms. The message was transmitted in every human language. The demands were simple. Surrender all mining rights to your heavy metals and rare earth elements. Allow Zektar resource extraction teams to operate freely on your world. Resist, and your cities will burn. Vextul expected the humans to respond within hours, probably with desperate pleas for mercy. Every other species had. Instead, he waited an entire day before receiving a reply. A single human shuttle approached his flagship, broadcasting peaceful intentions. Vextul allowed it to dock. He was curious what excuse the humans would offer. The human diplomat was small, wearing a dark suit and carrying a thin briefcase. She walked into the command center without showing any fear, even though she was surrounded by Zektar warriors twice her size. Vextul found her confidence amusing. I am Ambassador Chun, the human said. I represent the United Earth Coalition. We have reviewed your demands. And you surrender? Vextul asked. No, Chun replied calmly. We offer you a counter-proposal. Leave our system within 72 hours. Do so peacefully, and we will forget this intrusion. Refuse, and you will regret it. The bridge fell silent. Then Vextul began to laugh. His officers joined in. The human stood there, not moving, her expression neutral. You threaten us? Vextul said, still chuckling. You have no weapons that can penetrate our shields. We counted your military vessels. We outnumber and outgun you by every measure. What could you possibly do to threaten the Zektar Dominion? That is for you to discover, Chun said. If you choose poorly. She turned and walked back to her shuttle without waiting for dismissal. Vextul watched her go, his amusement fading into irritation. The humans were either insane or hiding something. But what could they hide? His scouts had mapped their entire military infrastructure. Commander, his tactical officer said. Should we respond? Vextul considered his options. The High Command expected results. Delays made him look weak. He needed to demonstrate Zektar power immediately. Target the uninhabited island in their southern ocean, he ordered. The one they use for weapons testing. We will show them what resistance costs. The fleet moved into position. Human vessels appeared on sensors, scattered throughout the area. Vextul expected them to form defensive positions or perhaps attempt a desperate attack. Instead, they did something strange. They fled, not in panic, but in coordinated groups. Human ships retreated in different directions, not firing a single shot. They simply scattered and ran. Cowards, one of his officers muttered. Vextul frowned. Something felt wrong. Military forces did not abandon defensive positions that easily, even when outmatched. But he had no time for second-guessing. He gave the order. 3 plasma cannons fired simultaneously. The beam struck the island with enough force to vaporize stone. The ocean itself boiled away in a massive steam cloud. When the vapors cleared, the island was gone. Only a smoking crater remained beneath the waves. "Transmit to the humans," Vexthol commanded. "They have 24 hours to surrender. If they refuse, we target their cities next." The message was sent. The fleet held position, waiting for the inevitable capitulation. Vexthol retired to his quarters, confident the humans would break before morning. But in the analysis section of the ship, a junior officer named Krellick was reviewing the sensor data from the engagement. Something bothered him. He ran the recordings again, tracking the movement patterns of the human vessels, that they had not fled randomly. Every human ship had moved, along precise vectors. The retreat was coordinated down to the second. It was not panic. It was execution of a predetermined plan. Krellick highlighted the flight paths on his screen. When viewed as a whole, the human movements formed a pattern. They had deliberately vacated specific zones of space, creating empty corridors while clustering in others. He brought his findings to the senior tactical officer, who dismissed them. Human movements meant nothing. They were defeated and knew it, but Krellick could not shake the feeling that the humans had wanted to abandon those positions. That the entire engagement was designed to make the Zektar feel confident. That every action the humans took was calculated. He returned to his station and continued analyzing the data. Somewhere in these patterns was a message. The humans were trying to tell them something, or perhaps, Krellick thought with growing unease, the humans were hurting them. The 24-hour deadline passed. No surrender came from Earth. Vexthol issued orders for the fleet to advance toward the human homeworld. It was time to end this farce. As the Zektar warships began their approach, not one of them noticed the millions of tiny objects that now floated in their wake. Objects that looked like ordinary space debris. Objects that human ships had carefully positioned during their retreat the previous day. The trap was set. The Zektar were already inside it, and the humans waited patiently for the next move. The Zektar fleet crossed the orbit of Mars 3 days after their ultimatum expired. Vexthol sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display. Human vessels had withdrawn to positions around Earth itself, exactly as he predicted. They were making their final stand at their homeworld. It was a mistake. Grouping their forces made them easier to destroy. "Commander," the navigation officer called out, "I am receiving conflicting position data." Vexthol looked up. "Explain." "Our sensors show we are at coordinates 479, but the navigation system claims we are at coordinates 482. Both cannot be correct. Recalibrate your instruments," Vexthol ordered. But within minutes, other ships reported similar problems. Coordinates did not match visual confirmation. Sensor readings contradicted each other. The navigation AI was processing thousands of different signals, each one claiming to be the correct position marker. Vexthol called his chief engineer to the bridge. "What is causing this?" The engineer studied the data streams. "Commander, we are being flooded with false telemetry. Someone has seeded this entire region with broadcasting devices. Millions of them. Each one sends out position signals. Our systems cannot filter the real data from the false. Human tricks," Vexthol growled. "Switch to manual navigation. Use visual confirmation only." The order went out across the fleet. Ships slowed to a crawl as pilots relied on their own eyes rather than instruments. It was primitive, but it worked. The Zektar advance continued. Vexthol felt a flicker of respect for the humans. The tactic was crude, but effective. It proved they understood one thing about warfare. You do not need to destroy your enemy if you can confuse him. The fleet tightened its formation to maintain visual contact between vessels. They pushed forward, closing the distance to Earth. Vexthal estimated they would reach firing range within 6 hours. That was when the electromagnetic pulses hit. The explosions were small, barely enough to register on shields. But they were not designed to penetrate shields. They were designed to fry every external sensor array and communication antenna on the Zektar ships. Dozens of vessels reported total loss of external sensing capability. Others lost communication systems. The fleet could still see, but now they were partially deaf and blind to electronic signals. Defensive positions? Vexthal shouted. Reform the line. But forming defensive positions required coordination, and coordination required communication. Ships bumped against each other as they tried to reorganize without clear channels. It was chaos, contained only by strict discipline. Vexthal activated his backup systems. The Zektar had planned for electronic warfare. Every ship carried redundant equipment. Within 20 minutes, basic communications were restored across the fleet. Damage report, Vexthal demanded. No ships lost, Commander. Hull integrity at 100% on all vessels. Shields are holding. But we are vulnerable until repairs are complete. Vexthal calculated quickly. His fleet was wounded but not broken. The humans had bought themselves time, nothing more. He gave the order to continue the advance at reduced speed. Then the human ships reappeared. Asterisk. They did not attack. They simply moved in fast, darting patterns around the Zektar formation. Whenever a Zektar vessel tried to target them, they would accelerate away, staying just beyond effective weapons range. At first, Vexthal thought it was harassment, an attempt to slow them down further. But his tactical officer recognized the pattern. Commander, they are hurting us. Every time we try to spread out, they force us to turn inward. They are pushing us into a tighter formation. Vexthal looked at the tactical display. The officer was right. The humans were not fighting. They were guiding the Zektar fleet like livestock, narrowing their path, forcing them into a specific corridor of space. Break formation, Vexthal ordered. Spread out. Do not let them control our movements. But every attempt to spread out was met by human vessels darting in, forcing ships to change course or risk collision. The humans were faster, more maneuverable, and they seemed to know exactly where each Zektar ship would move before it moved there. Krellick, the young analyst, accessed the tactical computer. He ran predictions on the human movements. Then he saw it. The humans were pushing them into the space between Earth and its moon, a region crowded with asteroids and orbital debris. Commander, Krellick called out, we must change course immediately. They are leading us into the first kinetic impact struck the shield of a cruiser before he could finish. Then another. Then hundreds. The Zektar had been focused on the human ships, not on the debris field around them. They had not realized that every asteroid, every piece of orbital wreckage, every satellite in the region had been fitted with small thrusters. The humans had turned the entire space around their homeworld into a weapons platform. Rocks moving at thousands of kilometers per second slammed into Zektar shields. The shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not kinetic mass. They could handle small impacts, but not this sustained bombardment. 3 ships lost shield integrity within seconds. The kinetic weapons tore through their hulls like paper. Explosions bloomed across the formation. 7 more vessels took critical damage, their engines failing, their armor breached. Retreat, Vexthal ordered. Full reverse thrust. Get us out of this kill box. The fleet turned and burned back the way they came. Human vessels did not pursue. They simply watched as the Zektar limped away, leaving debris and bodies floating in the void. Vexthal stared at his tactical screen in disbelief. He had lost 10 ships without destroying a single human vessel. The humans had not won through superior firepower. They had won through patience, misdirection, and perfect timing. They had made the Zektar defeat themselves. Asterisk Vexthal's flagship retreated to the outer system, beyond Neptune's orbit. The commander sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the battle recordings. His career was in ruins, his fleet was crippled, and he still did not fully understand what had happened. The High Command's response arrived 12 hours later. They were sending reinforcements, but they also sent questions. How could a primitive species inflict such damage? What had Vexthal missed in his reconnaissance? He had no good answers. The truth was humiliating. The humans did not have better weapons or stronger ships. They had something the Zektar did not expect: the ability to think several moves ahead. Every action the Zektar took, the humans had anticipated. Every weakness in Zektar doctrine, the humans had exploited. It was like fighting an opponent who had already read the script of the battle. 3 days later, the reinforcement fleet arrived. 20 additional warships, including a dreadnought commanded by Supreme Admiral Dexnor. She was a veteran of 9 campaigns, known for her ruthless efficiency. Dexnor reviewed Vexthal's reports in silence. Then she gave her orders. We will break their spirit before we break their defenses. Humans rely on communication and coordination. We will shatter both. But as the combined fleet prepared for a new assault, strange broadcasts began flooding the Zektar communication channels. At first, the crew thought it was more electronic interference. Then they realized the broadcasts were in their own language. Attention vessel ZK-774, a human voice said in perfect Zektar. We know your ship lost 7 crew members in the last engagement. Engineering Specialist Varduk, Communications Officer Melris, Medical Technician. The voice listed all 7 names. Similar messages played on other ships. The humans were naming the dead from every vessel in the fleet. They knew details that should have been impossible for them to know. Crew manifests, service records, personal information. Panic spread through the fleet. Had the humans infiltrated their systems? Were there spies among the crew? How could they know so much? Dexnor ordered a full security sweep. Nothing was found. No evidence of hacking, no signs of sabotage. But the broadcast continued, growing more disturbing. Now the humans were not just listing names. They were describing scenarios. What would happen if life support failed on certain ships? How many Zektar would die if orbital weapons were turned on the fleet itself? Detailed simulations of disaster, each one coldly calculated, each one plausible. This is psychological warfare, Dexnor told her officers. They are trying to make us afraid. We will ignore their tricks. But ignoring the messages proved difficult. The humans were too accurate in their predictions. They described tactical formations before the Zektar used them. They mentioned supply levels that should have been classified. They seemed to know everything. Krellick studied the broadcast carefully. He realized something the others had missed. The humans were not actually inside Zektar systems. They were using pattern recognition and probability analysis. They had studied the Zektar so thoroughly that they could predict decisions before they were made. The humans had turned psychology itself into a weapon. Dexnor decided to end the waiting. She would strike at Earth's capital cities simultaneously, forcing immediate surrender. She gave the order to her weapons officers. Nothing happened. Report, Dexnor demanded. Admiral, the targeting computers are locked. I cannot access firing controls. Every weapons officer on every ship reported the same problem. Then, on every screen in the fleet, a human face appeared. It was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. I am General Park, the human said. We have been watching your preparations. We knew 6 hours ago that you would attempt this strike. We calculated your target selections, your attack vectors, your timing. Everything you just tried to do, we predicted. Dexnor stared at the screen. Impossible. This is a bluff. Is it? General Park smiled. Your flagship will target New York, Beijing, and London. Ship ZK-882 will target Moscow and Delhi. Ship ZK-445 will target Tokyo. Shall I continue? We have your complete battle plan, Admiral. Not because we stole it, because we calculated it. The screen showed a complex map of projected Zektar attack patterns. Every detail matched Dexner's actual orders. We are not more powerful than you, General Park continued. We are more creative. We have spent 10,000 years fighting each other, developing strategies, countering strategies, building entire academic disciplines around predicting and manipulating behavior. You are stronger. You are more advanced. But you are not prepared for the way humans think about conflict. The screens returned to normal. Weapon systems came back online. But the message was clear. The lockout had not been a hack. It had been a demonstration. The humans had placed code in their own systems that would activate if specific Zektar actions occurred. They had predicted what the Zektar would do and prepared the response in advance. Dexner sat in her command chair, feeling something she had never experienced in combat. Not fear of death, but fear of inadequacy. The humans were playing a game the Zektar did not know how to play. What are your orders, Admiral? Her tactical officer asked. Dexner did not answer immediately. For the first time in her career, she was unsure. The Zektar High Command ordered a third wave of ships to Earth's system. They could not accept defeat from a species they had deemed inferior. Pride demanded victory, even if the cost was high. But something had changed among the Zektar crews. They no longer spoke about conquest with confidence. They questioned every order, wondering if the humans had already predicted it. Sleep cycles were disrupted as personnel remained on constant alert, afraid of missing some human trick. Morale was crumbling. Vex still noticed it first among his own crew. Officers who had served with distinction for years were making basic errors. Sensor operators jumped at shadows. Engineers checked and rechecked systems that were functioning perfectly. They are inside our heads, Krellick said, during a private meeting with Vexthul. The humans do not need to hack our systems. They have hacked our minds. Vexthul knew he was right. The humans had found a vulnerability that technology could not fix. Fear, doubt, uncertainty. These were things shields could not deflect. Meanwhile, the humans had been busy in other ways. Their broadcasts were no longer directed only at the Zektar fleet. They were transmitting to every corner of the Dominion's empire, reaching the 17 conquered species. The messages were simple. They showed the Zektar fleet's losses. They explained the tactics used to defeat superior force. They shared strategies and methods. They were teaching the subjugated species how to resist. Two of the conquered worlds began rebelling. Small incidents at first, but growing. The Zektar Empire suddenly faced problems in multiple systems. Resources were being diverted. Attention was splitting. Dexner realized the humans were fighting a strategic war, not just a military one. They understood that the Zektar Empire was stretched thin, held together by the perception of invincibility. By breaking that perception, they were destabilizing everything. The third wave arrived, bringing the total Zektar fleet to 90 warships. It was the largest force the Dominion had ever assembled for a single planet. Supreme Commander Vorath himself came to oversee the operation. We will not be clever, Vorath announced. We will be overwhelming. Every ship advances together. We saturate their defenses with fire. Simple, direct, unstoppable. It was a sound strategy. No amount of human tricks could defeat raw numbers and firepower. The fleet moved as one massive formation. Human vessels appeared on sensors, forming a defensive line between the Zektar and Earth. This time, they did not scatter. They held position. A single transmission came from the human fleet. "We have analyzed this scenario," General Park's voice said. "Our computers have calculated 127 possible outcomes of this engagement. In 91 of them, we lose Earth but destroy your fleet. In 23, we save Earth and cripple your empire's military capacity for a generation. In 13, we trigger mutually assured destruction that renders this system uninhabitable for both our species." Vorath listened but did not respond. Empty threats. "In 0 scenarios," Park continued, "do you achieve your original objective? You came here for resources. You will leave with only casualties and questions. We offer one final option: peaceful withdrawal and a trade agreement that benefits both our species. You have 10 minutes to decide." Vorath cut the transmission. "Continue the advance." But Dexner was running her own calculations, using Zektar tactical computers to model the engagement. What she found disturbed her. The human predictions aligned with her own projections. Both sides would suffer catastrophic losses. "Commander Vorath," she said quietly, "the humans are not bluffing. They must be. They cannot match our firepower. They do not need to match it. They need only to make victory too expensive." Dexner pulled up her analysis. "Even if we win this battle, we will lose 40% of our fleet. Then we must occupy a hostile world. A world where every civilian might be a guerrilla fighter. A species that thinks generations ahead." Kralik added his own findings. "Sir, I have studied human military history. They have a concept called Pyrrhic victory, winning at such cost that it becomes defeat. They are very good at creating these situations." Vorath stared at the tactical display. 10 minutes? He could give the order to fire. The Zektar would probably win. But Dexner was right. The cost would be enormous. And then what? Occupy a world where every human spent every moment planning revenge? He thought about the rebellion starting in other systems. News of a costly victory here would inspire more resistance. The Empire could fracture. 5 minutes remaining. Vorath made his decision. "Halt the advance," he ordered. "Open a channel to the humans." The negotiations took 3 days. The Zektar withdrew from Earth's system. In exchange, humanity agreed to trade agreements that gave the Dominion access to resources, but under human terms, at human prices. Vextel watched the fleet retreat and felt only relief. They had survived. Kralik stood beside him on the observation deck. "We should have studied them more carefully before coming here. What would we have learned?" Vextel asked. "That they have spent their entire existence fighting each other. Nation against nation, culture against culture. They have refined warfare into an art form. Every human conflict taught them new strategies. They built schools to study war. They wrote books analyzing every battle. They created games to practice tactical thinking." Vextel nodded slowly. "We defeated other species through strength. But the humans defeated themselves thousands of times and learned from every failure." "Yes," Kralik agreed. "We conquered 17 species who were weaker than us. But humans grew strong by being weak. They had no natural weapons, so they built them. They had no thick armor, so they learned to avoid being hit. They could not overpower enemies, so they learned to outthink them. The Zektar fleet jumped to faster than light travel, leaving Earth behind. News of the withdrawal spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species took notice. Earth was not a target. Humans were not warriors in the traditional sense, but they were something perhaps more dangerous. They were survivors who had turned survival into science. On Earth, General Park watched the alien fleet disappear from sensors. His staff celebrated, but he remained thoughtful. "Sir?" an aide asked. "Is something wrong?" "We won. This time," Park said. "But they will remember us. Others will hear what happened. We need to be ready. For what, sir? For whatever comes next. Because that is what humans do. We prepare. We plan. We think ahead. It is the only advantage we have, and we must never lose it. The aide left. Park turned back to the strategic maps on his screen, already planning for threats that might not arrive for decades. Because humans always prepared for the future. It was what made them terrifying.